Okay, so this one is similar, claiming 9-year-olds were way more smart and mature back then, and nobody counted ages when the prophet was alive. So I spent part of my day reading up on this because I was curious, because this claim comes up a lot that Muslims back then in Muhammad's time didn't count people's ages or birthdays, and therefore Aisha could have been any age, and they're just basically guessing that she was 6 or 9, and some people say she was a teenager, like 19. Never mind the hadiths from Aisha saying that she was just a child playing with dolls when Muhammad come around, but, Anyway, so this is partly true. They didn't necessarily do birthdays. They took on similar to early Christians, they didn't celebrate birthdays. Early Muslims were similar. They didn't want anything to do with pagan practices, and birthdays were heavily pagan influenced, invented pretty much by paganism for the the astrology, the stars, people in prominent positions, and the gods of other religions were celebrated with their birthdays. So early Christianity and early Muslims distanced themselves from this because the celebration of birthdays was still a very sort of pagan worship act. Not like today where it's just, yay, you survived another year around the sun, have a cake. But to say that they didn't count ages at all is misleading. So I found this article from a Muslim site talking about something in Sharia law about becoming the age 15 is when you're considered mature. So they obviously counted ages to some extent to be able to do this. And there is a hadith, I think, where I can't remember who. I'll see if I can find it. Here it is. It's in the same article. I was being silly. So this boy, I think, wanted to go on a expedition, and he was 14 and considered too young. I had to wait a year until he was 15, and then he was considered mature and old enough to go on it. So whether they actually celebrated birthdays, probably not. But they obviously marked the time passing of people's ages in some way to be able to monitor these things for the Sharia law requirements. And then from this other source I found, it says that the Prophet instructed that as children become Islamically accountable adults after they are 15 lunar years old, which is about 14.5 solar Gregorian years on modern calendar systems. So all that's to say is that this comment is very slightly correct in the sense that they didn't count birthdays in the same way we do today, but that doesn't mean they didn't count ages at all, because even Sharia law requires you to be 15 to be counted as mature. And the other source, which apparently the Prophet said, is that you count the years by lunar years. So they would have known how old Aisha was just based on that. So if 15 lunar years, according to other sources, is about 14.5 Gregorian years, then saying that Aisha was 6 and 9, even in lunar years, that still puts her at about 5.5 to 8.5 if it calculates the same way. So she was just a normal child who played with dolls and her friends. As she herself narrated here, the Prophet, I used to play with dolls in the presence of the Prophet and my girlfriends as well. So there you go. Aisha was just a normal child. She was the age the Quran says, because they counted ages by lunar years. Even if they didn't celebrate actual birthdays in the same way we do today, or even back then, they didn't celebrate them in the pagan sense. Birthdays and ages were still tracked.